The day everything changed between me and my best friend's father. The rain-slicked streets of Seattle gleamed under the first hesitant rays of dawn. But inside the old Craftsman house on Queen and Hill, the air hung heavy with unspoken thunder. I stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, heart slamming like a bass drum in my chest, watching David, Jake's dad, for Christ's sake, lean against the counter, his broad shoulders slumped just enough to betray the weight he carried alone. 45 years old, with that salt and pepper scruff framing a jaw that could cut glass. He was nursing a black coffee, steam curling up like a ghost of last night's regrets. His eyes, those deep hazel pools that had haunted my dreams since I was 18, flicked up to meet mine. And in that split second, the dam broke. "Alex?" he murmured, voice rough as gravel. Low enough it vibrated through the floorboards. "You shouldn't be here. Not like this." But his hand, God, that calloused architect's hand, marked from years sketching blueprints and building lives from scratch, reached out anyway, brushing my knuckles. One touch, electric, forbidden, and just like that, the friendship I'd clung to for a decade cracked wide open, spilling secrets that could drown us all. I'd known Jake since we were kids, terrorizing the playground at Roosevelt High, two scrawny misfits bonding over stolen comic books and dreams of escaping this drizzly corner of the Pacific Northwest. He was the golden boy, easy laugh, quarterback build, the kind of guy who made teachers beam and girls and later guys swoon without trying. Me? I was the shadow, the wiry artist type with paint under my nails from late-night sketches in my mom's cramped garage studio, always one step behind but glued to his side. Best friends. Brothers unbreakable. Until his mom bailed when we were 16, leaving David to pick up the pieces. PTA meetings, soccer practices, and those quiet dinners where he'd grill burgers on the back patio, the sizzle of meat mixing with the distant hum of ferries on Puget Sound. David was the rock, divorced, straight as an arrow, or so I thought, pouring his soul into designing eco-homes that dotted the hillside neighborhoods, sustainable dreams in a city choking on its own fog. He smelled like cedar shavings and fresh espresso, a scent that lingered on Jake's old hoodies I'd borrow, twisting my gut into knots I didn't dare name. By 22, college had scattered us. Me grinding through my graphic design degree at UW, crashing at Jake's more nights than my own dorm, him chasing venture capital gigs in Portland but always looping back for weekends of craft beer and bad horror flicks. That Friday, though, Jake had bolted early for a job interview, leaving me with a half-empty pizza box and a promise to lock up. "Dad's around if you need anything," he'd texted, oblivious as ever. Need anything? Yeah. Space. A way to stop replaying that moment 2 summers ago, when I'd caught David shirtless after a jog, sweat tracing the lines of his chest like forbidden ink, and he'd clapped me on the back with a grin that said, "Kid." But his eyes, they lingered. Too long. Or maybe that was just my imagination, starved for what it craved. The house creaked like it held memories in its bones. The same groan of floorboards that echoed our teenage sleepovers, ghost stories whispered under blankets that smelled of downy and teenage sweat. I padded down the hall toward the guest room, socks whispering against the wool runner, when the kitchen light spilled out like an accusation. There he was, silhouetted against the window, the city skyline a blurry watercolor beyond. My breath hitched, a soft hitch I hoped the walls swallowed. He turned, slower than he should have, like he knew I was there before I even stirred. Couldn't sleep, his voice wrapped around me, warm and worn, like the flannel he favored on chill mornings. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed to hide the tremble in my fingers. Nightmares? I lied, the word tasting like ash. Truth was dreams of him, of tangled sheets and his weight pinning me down, breath hot against my neck, had me bolting upright, sheets twisted like restraints. The air between us thickened, charged with the faint ozone scent of impending storm outside, rain pattering now against the panes like impatient fingers. He set his mug down with a porcelain clink, the sound sharp in the quiet, and crossed the space in 2 strides. Close, too close. His cologne, sandalwood, faint and earthy, mingled with the bitter bite of coffee on his breath as he searched my face. "You've been distant lately, Alex." Jake notices. Hell, I notice. His hand lifted, hesitated, then settled on my shoulder, thumb brushing the hollow of my collarbone through my thin tee. Fire. A spark that raced down my spine, pooling low and insistent. I swallowed hard, throat clicking dryly. It's nothing. Everything. The main fracture. I loved Jake like a brother, but David? He was the ache I couldn't shake. The man who'd taught me to tie a Windsor knot for my first interview, who'd ruffled my hair after a breakup and called me son in a way that twisted the knife deeper. Gay in a world that didn't always bend kindly. I'd buried it under bro-code loyalty. But here, in this pre-dawn hush, with his touch branding me, the conflict roared to life. What if I leaned in? What if I ruined it all? For Jake, for this makeshift family that had patched my own broken one. He exhaled, a long, ragged sigh that ghosted my skin, eyes darkening with something raw, unguarded. It's not nothing. I see you, kid. The way you look at me when you think I'm not watching. My heart stuttered, a wild flutter like wings trapped in my ribs. He knew. God, he knew. The room spun, the tick of the wall clock mocking us. Tick, tock, like a countdown to catastrophe. Outside, thunder grumbled low, a distant rumble that mirrored the storm in my chest. His fingers tightened, not pulling away, drawing me nearer until our breaths synced, ragged and uneven. "Alex," he whispered, voice cracking like old wood. It's a goddamn minefield." But his other hand rose, cupping my jaw, tilting my face up. Lips parted, mine dry and trembling. The world narrowed to that point of contact. His thumb tracing my lower lip, soft as a promise, rough as reality. And then the kiss, not gentle, hungry. His mouth crashed into mine like the rain against the roof, all pent-up storm and salt-slick need. I gasped into it, hands fisting his shirt, the cotton warm from his body heat, pulling him closer until our hips aligned, hard truths pressing undeniable. He tasted like coffee and regret, tongue sweeping in with a groan that vibrated through me, low and primal. My back hit the doorframe with a thud, would biting into my spine, but I didn't care. Sensation overload, his stubble scraping my chin like sandpaper bliss, fingers threading into my hair, tugging just enough to arch my neck. A moan escaped me, muffled against him, the sound wet and desperate, echoing in the empty hall. This was it, the change, the shatter. Best friend's dad. My anchor. My undoing. We broke apart gasping, foreheads pressed, breaths mingling in hot bursts. His eyes, wild now, searched mine, a war of want and what-ifs raging there. "Fuck!" he breathed, voice hoarse, hands sliding down to grip my waist, anchoring us both. The rain hammered harder, a symphony of chaos outside, while inside, the silence screamed. Jake's face flashed in my mind, his grin, his trust, and guilt clawed up my throat, bitter as bile. "We can't," I whispered, even as my body betrayed me, leaning in for more. David's laugh was bitter, a short bark that cut the tension like glass. "Can't? Or won't admit we already have." He stepped back, just an inch, but it felt like miles, the cool air rushing in like judgment. His chest heaved, shirt rumpled where I'd clutched it, a map of our sin. The coffee maker beeped then, shrill and intrusive, yanking us back to the mundane. He turned away first, pouring another mug with hands that shook just slightly, architect's precision cracking under emotion's weight. I watched the steam rise, curling like the lies we'd both told ourselves. This was Seattle. Layers of gray hiding bursts of color, secrets buried under evergreens. But dawn crept in relentless, painting the counters gold, illuminating the wreckage we'd wrought. One night, one kiss, and everything, friendship, family, future, teetered on the edge of freefall. What now? Run? Confess? Or dive deeper into the abyss? Consequences be damned. The day had just begun, but it already felt like the end of the world I knew. Morning light sliced through the blinds like accusatory fingers, pointing out the disarray we'd left in our wake. I slumped into a chair at the scarred oak table. David's pride, hand-built from reclaimed driftwood during his divorce haze. Nursing a mug that burned my tongue, the scald a welcome distraction from the throb in my chest. He busied himself at the stove, cracking eggs into a cast-iron skillet with mechanical precision. The sizzle popping like tiny fireworks, grease spitting in warning. Bacon joined next, the fatty strips curling under heat, filling the air with that smoky, homey allure that always made this place feel like sanctuary. But not today. Today, it choked me, thick with the phantom taste of him. Coffee and salt and something darker, unspoken. "Sit," he said, not looking up, plating the food with a fork scrape that set my teeth on edge. His voice was steady now, that paternal timbre he'd perfected over years of solo parenting. But his shoulders betrayed him, tense knots under the faded mariner's tee that hugged his frame too well. I obeyed because what else could I do? Legs like lead, I pulled out the chair with a groan of wood on tile, the sound echoing my internal collapse. The first bite of eggs, fluffy, peppered just right, stuck in my throat, flavor exploding in betrayal. How many breakfasts had I scarfed here, laughing with Jake over syrup-drenched pancakes, while David flipped them with a wink and a "eat up, boys"? Innocent then, poison now. We ate in silence, broken only by the rain's relentless tattoo on the roof, a white noise veil that did nothing to muffle the roar in my head. My fork scraped porcelain, a tiny screech that made him flinch barely, but I caught it, that microtell in the set of his jaw. 45 going on timeless, with laugh lines etched from forcing smiles through grief. His divorce 3 years fresh enough to scar but old enough to toughen. Karen had left for a gallery curator in Portland, chasing spotlights while he stayed anchored, raising Jake through the fallout. I'd seen the photos once, tucked in a drawer, them young and radiant at a vineyard wedding, her hand on his knee, his arm possessive around her waist. Straight-laced David, the family man. Except now his knee brushed mine under the table. Accidental? Deliberate? Sending a jolt up my thigh, heat blooming despite the chill seeping from the drafty window. "Talk to me," he finally said, pushing his plate away with a clatter, elbows on the table like a confessional. His eyes pinned me, intense, the hazel flecked with gold in the light, pulling me under like tidal pools. I set my fork down, the metal cool against my palm, and let out a breath I hadn't known I was holding. Shaky, ragged, the kind that whistles through clenched teeth. About what? The fact that I just made out with my best friend's dad in his kitchen like some soap opera reject. The words tumbled out bitter, laced with that Seattle sarcasm we all wield like umbrellas against the gloom. He winced, rubbing a hand over his face, stubble rasping under his fingers like sandpaper on silk. The sound intimate, grating, stirring memories I shouldn't have. "It's more than that, and you know it." His voice dropped, gravelly with the weight of truths long buried. He leaned forward, forearms corded with veins from hauling lumber on job sites, the faint scar on his knuckle. A hammer slip from last year's deck build, catching the light. I felt it building, Alex. The looks, the excuses to linger. Christ, last Christmas, when you helped with the tree. Your hand on mine steadying the star, and I. He trailed off, jaw clenching, a muscle ticking like a metronome. I remembered. Pine sap sticky between our fingers, the twinkle lights casting halos, Jake belting carols off-key in the living room while we stole that moment in the dim hallway. His breath had hitched then, too warm against my temple, and I'd pulled away like burned, blaming the eggnog. Guilt surged, hot and nauseating, twisting my gut worse than the cheap whiskey Jake and I had chased last night. Jake! I choked out, the name a lifeline and a noose. What about him? He's family. This us. It's betrayal on steroids. My voice cracked, high and boyish, betraying the 22 years I'd stacked against the world. Coming out at 17 to my mom's stunned silence and dad's averted eyes, scraping by on scholarships while sketching logos for coffee shops to pay rent. Jake had been my constant, punching bag for frustrations, alibi for hookups that fizzled fast. And David? He'd been the unattainable, the straight dad fantasy I jerked off to in shame, tissues crumpled in the guest bath sink. David's hand crossed the table, deliberate now, enveloping mine, warm, enveloping, calluses rough against my smoother skin. I know. Simple words, but they landed like blows, his thumb stroking my knuckles in slow circles that sent shivers racing up my arm. The bacon's aroma lingered, greasy and comforting, clashing with the sharp tang of my anxiety sweat under my arms. Outside, a car splashed through a puddle, tires hissing on wet asphalt, a reminder of the normal world spinning on without us. But pretending it's not there? That's killing me slower than any lie. His gaze held mine, unflinching, the vulnerability there cracking his armor. The man who'd framed his blueprints with pride, now frayed at the edges. I pulled back, chair scraping loud as judgment, standing so fast the blood rushed to my head in a dizzy whoosh. Then what? We sneak around like teenagers? Risk everything for what? A fling that ends in Jake hating us both. My voice rose, echoing off the cabinets lined with Jake's childhood mugs. Go Seahawks, world's best son. Each one a stab. David's face hardened, then softened, a flicker of pain that hollowed his cheeks. He rose too, towering but not intimidating, closing the gap until I could feel the heat radiating off him, like a furnace in this drafty old house. Not a fling, he growled, low and fierce, hands framing my face again, thumbs brushing tears I hadn't realized were tracking hot down my cheeks. Salt. His lips hovered, breath minty from the gum he'd chewed to steady himself, mingling with the faint chlorine from his morning swim in the community pool. The kiss this time was slower, deliberate, acclaiming. His mouth slanted over mine, firm and unyielding, tongue teasing the seam until I parted with a whimper, the sound swallowed by him. Hands roamed. Mine up his back, fingers digging into the flecks of muscle under cotton, feeling the ridges of his spine like braille secrets. His in my hair, tugging to angle deeper, a groan rumbling from his chest that vibrated through me, settling low and insistent. The counter dug into my hip as he pressed me back, bodies aligning in a grind that drew twin gasps. Mine high and needy, his guttural and wrecked. Rain lashed the window behind us, blurring the neighborhood into abstraction, while the stove's fan whirred softly, a mechanical heartbeat to our frenzy. We surfaced panting, lips swollen, his forehead to mine again, sweat beading on his temple. I don't know what this is, he admitted, voice threadbare. But it's real, and Jake, we'll tell him, together, when we're ready. Optimism? Delusion. In that moment, with his arms caging me in safety, it felt like hope. But as the sun climbed higher, gilding the room in false normalcy, doubt crept in like fog off the sound. Breakfast cold on the table, we'd crossed the Rubicon. The day stretched ahead, fraught with texts from Jake. How's the house? Dad cool. And the inexorable pull toward more. More touches. More risks. More everything. And in the quiet aftermath, as he traced lazy patterns on my thigh under the table, I wondered, was this the change we needed, or the one that would burn it all down? The afternoon sun finally broke through the clouds, casting long shadows across the backyard where the cherry tree Jake and I had climbed as kids now dripped petals like confetti from a ruined party. I wandered out there after lunch, sandwiches we'd picked at in awkward bursts of conversation, his knee pressing mine under the table like a Morse code of reassurance, needing air that didn't taste of him, of us. The grass squelched under my sneakers, wet from the morning's deluge, releasing that earthy petrichor scent that always grounded me, sharp and alive. Birds chattered in the branches, oblivious, their trill cutting through the low hum of a neighbor's lawnmower down the block, a suburban symphony underscoring the surreal bubble we'd trapped ourselves in. David stayed inside, sketching at his drafting table in the den. A habit, he said, to clear his head. I could picture him there. Pencil scratching vellum, lines emerging sharp and sure, much like the way he'd mapped my body earlier, exploratory and reverent. Heat flushed my cheeks at the memory. His hands unbuttoning my jeans in the hallway shadows, fingers wrapping around me with a hiss of indrawn breath, stroking slow until I buckled against him, spilling with his name on my lips like a prayer. We'd retreated then, breathless and spent, but the echo lingered, a low ache that no amount of fresh air could erase. My phone buzzed in my pocket, Jake's face lighting the screen. His goofy grin from our Vegas trip last spring, fedoras and neon glow. Guilt punched me square, a visceral twist that had me sinking onto the porch steps, wood creaking under my weight. Yo, how's the old man? He burned the eggs again. His voice boomed cheerful, traffic noise in the background from his drive back north. I forced a laugh, rusty and thin, throat tight as I gripped the railing, splinters pricking my palm. Nah, he's on his game. We talked shop, design stuff, lie layered on lie, each one heavier, the phone slick against my ear from sudden sweat. Cool, man. Listen, interview killed it. Got the gig. Beers on me Friday. Excitement bubbled in his tone. Pure Jake. Conquering the world one pitch at a time. My chest constricted, vision blurring as I stared at the fence line. Ivy tendrils snaking like veins. Hell yeah. Proud of you, bro. The words tasted like cardboard, but he bought it, rambling about stock options and loft dreams until I mumbled a goodbye, ending the call with fingers numb. Best friend. Soul brother. And here I was, unraveling his world for a taste of his father's forbidden fire. The screen door whined open behind me, hinges in need of oil. A small fix David always promised but never got to. Too buried in deadlines. His footsteps thudded soft on the planks. Then he settled beside me, thigh solid against mine, heat seeping through denim. No words at first, just his presence. The faint rustle of his sketchpad tucked under his arm. The clean soap scent from washing up, mingling with the yard's damp loam. He draped an arm around my shoulders, casual but weighted, pulling me into his side until my head rested on his chest. Thump thump, steady. His heart, a metronome to my chaos. He's gonna kill me? I muttered, voice muffled against his shirt, the cotton soft and worn from countless washes. David's chuckle rumbled deep, vibrating through me like bass from a car stereo, warm and wry. He'll want to kill us. No sugarcoating, just truth. His fingers combing idly through my hair, nails grazing scalp in tingles that arched my back. We sat like that as minutes stretched, the sun warming our faces, a rare blue sky mercy in this city of grays. A squirrel chittered overhead, scampering along the fence with acorn in tow, its claws scratching bark in frantic scratches. Much like the itch under my skin, urging more even as fear clawed back. Tell me about it, he said after a while, voice low, confidential, like sharing blueprints over late-night scotch. The wanting. When did it start for you? Honesty disarmed me, peeling back layers I'd armored tight. I shifted, propping chin on his knee to meet his gaze. Open now, hazel depths reflecting the sky's fleeting azure. Sophomore year. You drove us to that cabin up by Snoqualmie. Rain all weekend, remember? We played cards by the fire and you looked at me when I won that hand, like I was more than the kid tagging along. The memory flooded. Crackle of logs, the smoky tang of burning pine. His laugh booming as he conceded the pot, eyes crinkling in that way that lit something feral in me. He nodded slow, absorbing, his free hand tracing my jawline with feather-light touch, sending goosebumps racing despite the warmth. I remember, thought it was nothing then, just pride in you growing up. But lately, his voice trailed, roughening, thumb pausing at my pulse point, feeling the frantic flutter there. Last month, Jake's birthday barbecue. You in that button-down, sleeves rolled, laughing with him by the grill. Couldn't look away. Felt like a pervert, staring at my son's best friend like he was the only heir in the room. Confession hung heavy, laced with self-loathing, but his eyes burned steady, desire undimmed. My breath caught, a soft hitch that drew his gaze lower, to lips still tender from earlier. "You're not," I whispered, rising on knees between his legs, hands braced on thighs corded with runner's muscle. The porch groaned in protest, but we ignored it, my mouth finding his in a kiss that started sweet, lips brushing tentative, tasting the faint mint of his gum, then deepened, tongues tangling with a urgency born of stolen time. He groaned into it, low and broken, hands cupping my ass to haul me closer, grinding up in a rhythm that had me mewling, friction delicious through layers of cloth. Birds scattered in a flap of wings, startled by our abandon, but the world narrowed. Just his stubble scraping, his scent enveloping, the wet smack of mouths parting for air only to dive back. We broke when a truck rumbled past on the street, engine growl yanking us apart, chests heaving in unison. His forehead pressed to mine, breaths mingling hot and erratic, a bead of sweat trickling down his temple to salt our joined skin. "This is insane," he panted, but his hips rolled once more, teasing, drawing a whine from my throat that echoed my surrender. Afternoon light slanted golden across us, gilding his features in heroic relief. The strong nose, the faint freckles from summers past, making him look like a movie still, larger than life. Yet vulnerable too, in the way his fingers trembled slightly as they tucked a stray lock behind my ear. As the sun dipped toward the Olympics in the distance, painting the sky in bruised purples, reality intruded again. Jake's ETA text, "Home tomorrow? Miss ya." Innocuous, but it landed like a grenade. We disentangled slow, reluctant, his hand lingering on my hip as I stood, legs shaky like after a sprint. "Tonight," he murmured, voice husky promise, eyes dark with intent. "Stay, please." I nodded, throat too tight for words, the cherry blossoms swirling in a sudden breeze like omens. The day waned, but the pull between us intensified, a gravitational force bending time. Dinner loomed. Pasta he'd throw together, garlic and basil scents wafting. But beneath it, anticipation simmered, thick as the coming dusk. One more night, one more chance to map this uncharted territory before the world demanded its due. And as I glanced back from the yard, catching him watching me with that possessive glint, I knew change wasn't just coming. It was here, roots digging deep, impossible to uproot. Dusk settled over Queen, and like a velvet curtain, street lamps flickering on one by one, casting amber pools on the sidewalks where dog walkers hustled homeward. Inside, the house thrummed with low-key domesticity. The clink of wine glasses as David poured us each a glass of cab from the rack in the basement. Dusty bottle, label peeling from age, the cork popping with a satisfying sigh that mirrored my own pent-up release. "To whatever this is," he toasted, clinking his rim to mine, the crystal chime high and clear, cutting through the simmer of boiling water on the stove. His smile crooked, boyish almost, belying the lines of worry etched around his eyes. Eyes that now smoldered, tracing my form where I leaned against the counter, casual in borrowed sweats that hung loose on my slimmer frame, the drawstring a teasing knot at my hip. I sipped, the red liquid bold and tannic on my tongue, warming a path to my belly where nerves twisted like live wires. "To not fucking it up?" I countered, voice steadier than I felt, setting the glass down with a soft thunk. The kitchen filled with the heady perfume of garlic toasting in olive oil, sizzle popping like whispers of encouragement, basil leaves wilting fragrant under the knife's chop. He moved with easy grace, tossing pasta with a flick of tongs, sauce reducing in glossy bubbles, but his glances my way were loaded, lingering on the curve of my neck, the way my fingers drummed the granite, betraying impatience. Dinner prep is foreplay. Every brush of arm against arm sparked, electric. His pinky grazing my wrist as he reached for salt, drawing a sharp inhale from me that he caught with a knowing smirk. We ate at the table, candles guttering in mason jars, his idea, for ambience. He'd said with a wink that curled heat low in my gut. Forks twining linguine in slow, sensual loops, the twirl mimicking other motions my mind conjured unbidden. Conversation flowed, halting at first, skirting the edges. His latest project, a net-zero passive house on Capitol Hill, all sleek lines and green roofs. My thesis sketches for a queer graphic novel, panels of shadowed figures in rainy alleys, longing etched in ink. But wine loosened tongues, and truth spilled like the Merlot staining my lips. I dated a guy in college, he admitted midway through, voice pitched low over the scrape of plates, candlelight dancing shadows across his stubble. Brief, sophomore year. Thought it was experimentation. Buried it when Karen came along, small-town pressure, you know? Dad's a logger up in Bellingham. Expects the wife, the kids, the truck. My fork paused, noodles dangling forgotten. A drop of sauce plopping wet onto porcelain. Surprise widened my eyes, but not shock. No, more like validation. The world tilting to reveal hidden contours. Why bury it? Soft question, but it landed heavy, stirring the air between us thick as the steam rising from our bowls. He leaned back, chair creaking under his weight, running a hand through hair threaded silver at the temples, the motion tousling it boyishly. Fear. Jake was little then. After the divorce I couldn't complicate things. But you, his gaze locked, intense, pulling me across the table like gravity. You make me want to dig it up. All of it. Heat flooded me, cheeks burning under his scrutiny, but I held it, setting my fork down with deliberate calm, the metal cool farewell. Show me. Bold, reckless. But the wine sang in my veins, and his eyes darkened, pupils blowing wide as he rose, chair shoving back with a skid. In 3 strides he was there, hauling me up by the collar of his own sweatshirt. Irony not lost, mouth claiming mine in a kiss that tasted of tomatoes and desire, tongues dueling fierce. I melted into it, hands fisting his tea, bunching fabric to expose the taut plane of his abs, fingers splaying possessive over warm skin. A groan tore from him, raw and animal, vibrating into my chest as he lifted me onto the table, dishes scattering in a clatter of porcelain and silver, wine sloshing red across with like spilled secrets. Legs wrapping his waist, I arched into him, friction grinding urgent through barriers, his hardness pressing insistent against my core, drawing a keening whine from my throat that he swallowed greedily. Hands everywhere. His under my shirt, palms rough mapping ribs and nipples pebbling under touch, thumbs circling until I bucked, gasping wet against his neck. Mine in his hair, tugging to bare his throat, teeth grazing pulse point where it hammered wild, the salt of his skin blooming on my tongue. Alex, he rasped, voice wrecked, hips rolling in a rhythm that promised oblivion, the table groaning protest under our weight. Candle flames danced erratic, wax dripping hot tears onto the cloth, mirroring the slick slide of sweat between us. We didn't make it to the bedroom, not then. He dropped to his knees right there, kitchen tile hard under him but ignored, eyes locked on mine as he tugged sweats down, cool air kissing exposed skin before his mouth followed, hot, enveloping, tongue swirling with architect's precision, building me stroke by devastating stroke. I shattered fast, back bowing off the wood with a cry that echoed off cabinets, fingers white-knuckled in his hair, waves crashing relentless until I slumped, boneless, breaths heaving in sobs of aftershocks. He rose slow, kissing up my body, navel, sternum, throat, until lips met mine, sharing my taste in a kiss salty and intimate, his arousal straining against denim, a promise deferred. Later, in the dim hall lit by a single bulb's glow, we tangled proper. Him pressing me into the guest room mattress, Spring's squeaking old man protest, bodies aligning slick and sure, slow at first, exploratory, his fingers prepping with lube cool from the nightstand, stretching me with care that bordered worship, whispers of beautiful and mine ghosting my ear like fog. Then deeper, him sliding home with a shared groan that rattled the windows, pace building to frantic, skin slapping skin, bed frame thumping wall in Morse code ecstasy. My nails raking his back in red trails he'd wear like badges. Climax hit us staggered me first, clenching around him with a wail, then him, burying deep with a bellow that shook dust from the rafters, collapsing atop in a heap of limbs and labored breaths. We lay after entangled sheets smelling of us. Musk and cedar and spent passion, the rain resuming its patter like applause. His arm heavy across my waist, breath evening into snores soft as purrs. I traced the freckles on his shoulder, mind racing despite exhaustion. Jake's text blinked unread on the floor. Phone tumbled in haste. But tomorrow loomed, inevitable as tide. Meaningful? This felt like revelation. Two have slotting despite the fractures. But as his hand found mine in sleep, fingers lacing tight, I clung to the quiet conviction. Worth it. The risk, the ruin. For this, the raw, real beat of a heart sinking with mine. Dawn would come again, but tonight, in the cocoon of his embrace, change felt like home. Morning light filtered muted through heavy drapes, the kind of overcast glow that Seattle hoards like a miser, turning the room sepia-toned and introspective. I woke to David's side of the bed empty, sheets cool where his heat had been, but his pillow bore the indent of his head, faint cedar scent clinging like a lover's note. Panic flickered. Had he regretted? Bolted? But the murmur of the shower down the hall soothed it, water rushing steady, a white noise bomb. I stretched, muscles aching deliciously from night's exertions. A map of bruises blooming on my hips where his grip had tightened in fervor. Reminders that flushed my skin anew. Slipping from the covers, bare feet patting cold on hardwood. I followed the steam trail, door ajar in silent invitation. He stood under the spray, back to me, broad, water-sheened, ink of an old anchor tattoo from his Navy days rippling as shoulders flexed, soap suds tracing rivulets down the cleft of his ass. Breath caught in my throat, a soft snag, as desire stirred low, insistent despite soreness. Morning? I murmured, voice husky from sleep and screams, stepping in behind him, tile chill shocking against calves. He turned, slow water cascading over features softened by steam. Eyes crinkling in welcome, lips curving that crooked half-smile that undid me. Hey you! No awkwardness, just arms opening, pulling me under the stream, hot water pounding our joined skin like 1,000 tiny drums. We washed each other languid, his hands soaping my chest, thumbs circling nipples to peaks that had me hissing, arching into touch. Mine lathering his thighs, fingers teasing inner seams until his head fell back with a groan. Adam's apple bobbing under rivulets. Kisses interspersed, lazy and deep, tongues tangling under the downpour. The world reduced to slick slides and shared sighs. Last night, he breathed against my temple, water beating on lashes. Was everything. Honesty raw, no qualifiers. His forehead pressing mine as thumbs traced my jaw, tender counterpoint to night's frenzy. But reality intruded with the phone's trill from the bedroom, Jake's ringtone, blitzkrieg bop, blasting punk defiance. We froze, water drumming ironic applause, my stomach plummeting like the elevator in his downtown high-rise. Shit, I whispered, disentangling reluctant, grabbing a towel that rasped rough against dripping skin. David nodded, jaw set, shutting off the faucet with a squeak of knobs. Silence sudden, oppressive. I dressed hasty in yesterday's clothes, stiff and rumpled, the denim chafing like guilt as I snatched the phone mid-vibe. Jake, hey, dude, traffic's a bitch. Be there in 2 hours. Dad up? Craving his French toast. Cheer oblivious, horns blaring in background. A semi's air brakes whooshing like my exhaling dread. 2 hours. Not enough. Too much. Yeah, he's making breakfast now. See you soon. Click and call. The device felt leaden in my palm, screen glowing accusation. David emerged then, towel low on hips, droplets tracing chest hair dark and curling. He crossed to me, hands framing shoulders, thumbs kneading tension there in firm circles that drew a reluctant moan. "We tell him today," he said, voice steady as rebar, eyes holding mine with that architect's resolve. Blueprints drawn, no erasures. No more hiding. It's not fair to any of us. Logic appealed, but fear clawed counter. Jake's face crumpling, fists flying. The trio shattered like cheap glass. What if he... Words choked, but he silenced with a kiss, soft and grounding, tasting of mint paste and promise. Breakfast prep became battle prep. Eggs whisking frothy in a bowl. The whisks ting against sides rhythmic as my pounding heart. Bacon crisping in the microwave, pops punctuating the quiet where words failed. We moved in sync, him flipping toast, butter melting golden pools. Me slicing fruit, knife thudding board in anxious chops, citrus zest sharp in the air, stinging eyes already pricked with unshed. Conversation skirted. Weather, clearing, ironic mercy. His firm's new in turn, eager kid. Reminds him of me at that age. But undercurrent thrummed, tension coiling tighter than bedsprings last night. The doorbell chimed then. Early, Jake's impatience manifest in brass tones pealing cheerful. David's hand squeezed mine under the counter, brief but ironclad, before he wiped palms on a dish towel, fabric whispering dry. Showtime, I nodded, throat bobbing swallow, following him to the foyer where light streamed through leaded glass, gilding the welcome mat worn from years of feet. Door swung open, and there he was. Jake, duffel slung over shoulder, grin wide as the sound, hugging David fierce. Back thumps echoing hollow. "Missed you, old man." Then me, arm slung casual, cologne clouding. Same as always, but now it choked, brotherly clap on back feeling like fracture. Kitchen next, aromas assaulting. Jake inhaling deep. God, smells like heaven. Plates clattered set. Syrup poured sticky amber. Forks diving in with clinks. Normalcy facade thin as the steam rising from coffee mugs. My bites mechanical. Flavors muted. Eggnog French toast. Once ambrosia. Now ash on tongue. Jake rambled. Job details? Portland loft hunt. A girl he'd ghosted. Relief flickered. Petty but real. David's nods measured. Foot hooking mine under table. Anchor, lifeline, while I forced smiles, cheeks aching. It cracked mid-meal, casual as a dropped fork. Jake glancing between us, brow furrowing slight. "You two okay?" Vibes are off. Fork scrape halted, all eyes on him. His blue, so like David's but lighter, unscarred. Silence stretched. Rain starting anew outside. Patter building to downpour that mirrored the storm in my chest. David cleared throat. Mug set down with deliberate clunk. "We need to talk, son." Jake's fork paused halfway, yolk dripping slow, confusion knitting brows. About. Simple, but it hung heavy as the air before thunder. David's hand found mine under the table, fingers lacing visible now. A declaration. Jake's eyes dropped, widened, fork clattering to plate in metallic ring. "What the?" Voice pitched high, disbelief cracking through. I squeezed back, pulse thundering in ears, the room tilting as words tumbled. David's low rumble explaining. Feelings long denied, last night's turning point. No regrets but respect for him first. Jake's face cycled. Shock paling cheeks, anger flushing red, hurt glazing eyes like unshed rain. "My best friend? And you, dead." Chair shoved back. Screech loud as accusation. Standing abrupt. Napkin fluttering to floor like surrender. He paced then, boots thudding linoleum, hands raking hair blonde and tousled. "How long? Was I blind?" Questions barraged. Voice rising to yell that bounced off walls. Coffee sloshing in mugs from vibration. I rose too, hands placating. Jake, please. It's new, real, but you're still cut off by his glare, sharp as shattered glass. Still what? You're bro while you fuck my dad. Vulgarity landed slap, raw wound. But David stood, voice calm steel. Language, and yes, still family. If you'll let us prove it. Standoff stretched, rain lashing windows in fury, thunder growling distant but building. Jake deflated slow, shoulders slumping, sinking back into chair with a groan that echoed exhaustion. I need time. Quiet now, broken, eyes flicking between us. Wary, wounded, but not hateful. We nodded, giving space. Him retreating to his room upstairs, door clicking soft shut. Us in the den, David's arms enveloping me on the couch, chin resting atop head as we listened to footfalls pacing above. Heartache throbbed, but in his hold, solid, unyielding. I felt the meaning crystallize. Not easy, this love, but authentic, forged in fire. Hours bled into evening, sky darkening to bruised indigo, city lights twinkling like hesitant stars. Jake emerged at dusk, duffel repacked but lighter, standing in the doorway with eyes red-rimmed but clear. I'm crashing at mom's for a bit. Process. Hug for David. Stiff but given. For me, tentative pat on shoulder, whisper of don't hurt him or I'll kill you. Half joke, half vow, but it mended something fractured. Door closed behind him with finality, engine rumbling fade into night. Alone again, David pulled me close on the porch swing. Creak of chains a lullaby, blankets cocooning against chill. That went. Survivable. His laugh soft, rueful, breath warm on my temple. I nestled deeper, hand over his heart, feeling the steady thump that had become my compass. Yeah. And us? Question hung, vulnerable. He tilted my chin, kiss featherlight, eyes shining sincere in porch light. Us? We're just starting. Meaningful as hell. Rain eased to mist, stars peeking through, and in that quiet grace, the day that changed everything settled into promise. Not perfect, but profoundly ours. The future stretched, complicated and bright. Two men rewriting blueprints together, one touch at a time.